Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about this knife right here, the Benchmade 940, and a couple of my thoughts on it after owning it for about a year now. So let's get into it. So the Benchmade 940 is probably Benchmade's flagship model. Well, I don't know so much anymore. Like in the past, their flagship model was also probably the Griptilian, or that is up there too. Griptilian and Mini Griptilian, this is the full size here. Got a mini one right over here. But yeah, these knives are very popular for Benchmade. I'm not sure which one they sell the most, but yeah, the 940 is probably their more premium model in that like Griptilians come in maybe 100, 120 so new, whereas this one comes closer to 200. Oh, also their bug out's very popular, but yeah, this has been long standing in their line for I think over 20 years now, or about 20 years. So it's a long standing Benchmade classic, and it used to have, 154 cm blade steel. Now it's got S30V. You can also get versions in S90V, which is the 940-1 for another 50 or 60 bucks. It'll also come with a carbon fiber handle instead of the aluminum, which I've got here. So yeah, the knife is 3.45 inches in blade length. It features 6160 anodized aluminum handles with a purple anodized titanium backspacer. My light's a little harsh at the moment, but yeah, it's titanium and it's purple. It's pretty cool. You can also see it from the inside. Again, my lighting's at a bad angle here, but yeah. It's got phosphor bronze washers between the blade. The blade is out of S30V. And it's also got partial steel liners. They're just like little tiny cutout things that go to about here that are just sit underneath the aluminum, but it's not so much that it increases the weight. This comes in just under 3 ounces, I think about 2.9 or 2.8 ounces, which is great considering the amount of blade that you're getting. So yeah, it's a great knife. We'll get into the cutting abilities of it later, but in terms of like what it's bringing to the table, just in terms of numbers, really hard to beat. A knife to compare against, for example, is the Buck 110, which is about a 3.75 inch blade. But if you compare cutting edges, it's about the same. So the Buck 110 is on the left and the Benchmade 940 is on the right. And yeah, if you compare the cutting edges, they're very, very similar. But this is obviously upwards of 7 ounces and this one's under 3. The handle is also much slimmer and smaller. Much easier to carry. And also, in my opinion, more fun, easy to play with, easy to use lock. So I think that that's where it really shines, in that you can get a 3.5 inch blade for under 3 ounces in a very small, very carryable package. This is what it looks like in your pocket, very, very small. It fits next to my flow fold wallet very easily in my pocket. And if you throw a deep carry clip on there from Benchmade, which you can buy for about $10, or you can buy other iterations on eBay, then it really, really buries deep in your pocket, if none if any of it shows, which is very, very nice. Yeah, so I think that in terms of the numbers, what it brings to the table is like just a very capable blade, and that, part of why I like to carry a knife that's this size as opposed to something like the Mini Griptilian only, is that the blade lets me cut apples, which is something that I like to eat. So, it's very convenient in that sense, but it's also really utilitarian in that the tip is pointed down, so it retains a lot more tip strength. And also you got a nice little bit of belly right here. Well, not as bellied as something like the Buck 110, obviously. You still get plenty of real estate and tip action if you're like opening a package or something else. So yeah, in terms of that, that's something I really like. Also, another thing that I really like about this knife, part of why I carry it so much, is because of how easy it is to carry. It's also very narrow in this dimension, which is nice. But part of why I like it is that because these are like chalky sort of aluminum anodized handles, is that it begins to wear over time. So I bought this knife used. That's why there's this large scratched off portion. Someone had written something on it prior that I scratched off. But yeah, it sort of takes dings and beats along the way, which is like annoying at first when you first get a new knife to ding it up for the first time. But I think it adds character over time, and it's part of why I like to carry, knives that sort of show their wear over time. Even on the blade too, it's scratched up, smudge marks. But yeah, still a great knife. It's got a few drawbacks. It's not all good. For example, one thing that everyone sort of notices is that, yes, the blade is very, very narrow, which I guess helps if you're cutting like small curves in something. I don't know, if you're cutting like circles out of cardboard, it might be a little bit more agile than like a wider blade. But the problem is that even with this shorter blade, it's also flat ground. And the grind starts maybe, I don't know, maybe 2/3, maybe a little bit more than 2/3 of way over. So it's not a full flat grind by any means, which means that you're trying to, go down from quite a thick blade stock to the edge pretty quickly. And the grind is not that aggressive actually. So oftentimes 940s, and the complaint is that they don't cut that well because it's rather thick behind the edge, which makes it, harder to do some slicing tasks as opposed to, like the Buck 110 with its high hollow grind, or even other Benchmade knives like their Bailout and Bug Out series, which have a much, much wider blade in comparison. And the grind line also starts much farther back, which makes the edge much, much thinner, which makes it a lot easier to slice things. That is to say, a sharp 940 will still cut stuff. It just might have a little bit more trouble cutting through like large amounts of cardboard or other things that sort of the blade will get caught in over time. Personally, I don't mind that too much because the cutting applications that I'm using do not require a super, super slicey scalpel all the time. But it is something to keep in mind that if you want to pick up a 940, it will be a bit of a thick blade, which can have ramifications for the things that you're trying to cut. Additionally, it is no longer the lightest or smallest thing in Benchmade's lineup. For example, that Bailout that I was talking about earlier brings about the same blade length and also better slicing capabilities because it's a thinner blade and also a wider blade and also a higher grind. But this one will come in actually a 1/4 ounce lighter than the 940, which makes it even better on that sort of front too. This one's also got aluminum handles and partial steel liners. You can see it there. It goes to about this screw hole and that's it. Features an M4 blade because this is their 537 GY-1, so the upgraded Bailout model. It also had a pommel that I didn't really like, so I ground it off. But yes, there are other options nowadays, whereas this knife, when it first came out, was one of the few ones that did all the things that I said earlier, in that it came with that larger blade in that smaller package, and was really, really hard to beat on that front. In terms of the axis lock, I think it's my favorite kind of lock. It's very easy to use, very functional, very fun to play with. The 940 is additionally, this is something that not too many people talk about, very fidgety knife because it's got a lot of blade stock all the way out here in this tip because of the way that this swedging works. So there's quite a bit of material all the way out here, and it's also a bit of a long blade, which means that there's quite a bit of, it's not too difficult to get this like blade moving out and in, which means that even if the action gets a little bit gummed up, it'll still operate perfectly fine because of the extra weight of the blade sort of help flinging it open and flinging it close. Versus something like a mini Griptilian, which, just sort of has like a regular blade taper and therefore has less mass behind the blade when you fling it out and pull it in. So it doesn't necessarily flick as well. Overall, like in terms of all the knives I have, this is one that probably gets the most pocket time because I still enjoy it and what it is and what it stands for, and also the fact that it can get beat up and it looks cool over time. I also just love the way it looks in terms of this like deep forest green and the purple backspacer. I know some people don't like it, like the people who are like super tactical and stuff, but like, yeah, I just like the color combination so much. And I think that it's an important historical knife for Benchmade and also their, sort of flagship. And it presents like, well, probably not the most budget-friendly knife for the materials that are provided, especially in today's standards. I think it still serves a great, fills an important niche in the knives that I have. And it is the one that I find very often being stuffed into my pocket. So that's my concluding thoughts on the Benchmade 940. Let me know what you have to say in the comments below. Thanks for watching.